All right, we're good.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to the Meshery development call. Let's get started off with the introduction of the newcomers. I see a couple of new names. Monica, is this the first time you're attending this call?
Yes.
Hi. Could you just give us a brief introduction?
I'm Mario. Sorry, this is like using someone else's machine.
Okay, you got us. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Sorry for the false alarm. Yep, I'll rename.
No worries. Any other newcomers who are attending the call for the first time would like to introduce themselves? Okay. Last call for newcomers. Okay, I guess not then. All right. Moving on with the agenda then. The first topic is from Srinivas, but I don't think he's on the call. If he joins later on, then we can circle back to the topic. Moving on, we have Ashish or Rituraj with the CI adapters, with the adapter CI PR. Would one of you please?
Yeah, let me do this. Let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah. The PR is about generalizing the pod assertions, or not the pod assertions, the resource assertions. Earlier, we used to only check. In the earlier workflow that we had. We used to only check if the names of the pods. So let me just open up this file. So we had this thing called expected pods, namespaces, and expected pods, right? So it would just look at the pods, the names of the pods, if that pod has been spun up in that namespace, and it would assert that. So we just changed it to having any resources instead of just pods. Now we can do that with any resource. So we have expected resource types, and expected resource namespace. So let's say if you want to assert assert pods, then you'll put in here, you'll put let's say istod, and expected resource type would be a pod, and then namespace would be istio system, something like that. And we can also assert now services or CRDs or even any custom resources. If you want, we can assert anything like that. So yeah, that's what done so far. And just very quickly, I also have a test run with a modified istio, which we can see in here that I did one extra assertion of a service, which also went through successfully.
Okay, Rituraj, I actually looked at this PR and I saw a little bit of special care given to the pods. So if there is a resource type is pod, we check if it is running. And can you go back to that segment of code which I'm talking about so everyone has an idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you scroll on to line 175, I guess 196. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. So if it is a pod, then the way we confirm that it is successful if the status is running, and if it is not a pod, then we don't. Then it just has to show up. Nothing else, right?
Yeah, it just has to show up. Yeah.
Were you able to think of a better logic than this? For example, like if it's a replica set, then then you get desired and current and ready. There is a ready thing right now. So is there? Did you find a common field like ready on which we can rely on? So instead of the status, if like services, something that all types of resources have, so that we don't have to give special care to any one type of resource like we are doing right now to pods.
So stuff like, let's say, a CRD would not have anything running ever, right? So technically, we can never just rely on something. So we cannot assert that pod is running at the same time as some other resource has spun up. So we definitely need. I think so. We definitely need two different things. One is to just see if it has just spun up, kubectl knows about it, and one is to actually check if it's up and running. So
Okay.
as you said,
Yeah. So, but like for example, if we are asserting deployments, let's say, and just like pod, if pod is not running, we call that a failure. In the same way, if deployment says that, for example, in deployment, if it says there is a ready column there or available column there, so if it's 0 or 0 out of 1, then that should mean that the pod underlying replica set and then correspondingly the underlying pod has not come up. So if we are making assertions against the deployments, in that case, if we just check that this resource showed up, which it would because it got registered in the HCD, that's another fact that it didn't start, or what's the actual status of it. So in case of pods like we have running, in case of deployments, we won't be able to accurately make the assertion. Like we would say that yes, it is running, but maybe the underlying pods are not running in that case. And I'm not saying that to go and check the underlying pods, because that's the whole point. We don't need to. We just need to check the status of the deployment. But there also we get additional info like 1 out of 0, 0 out of 1. So if yeah, you're right. In cases of like CRD, I guess custom resource definitions don't have that field. Let me check. But yeah, I don't think they have all these fields like ready and up to date. But just like you do with the pods, can instead of just checking for running, it would be helpful if it was a little more generic. And the ones where you definitely can't do anything, for example, let's say I guess a virtual service maybe, or a destination rule where it just says that yeah, it's present. In that case, yeah, it's fine to not go into granular details and check whether the pod says running or whether the ready state says one off one or something like that. But basically my point is that just give a little bit of consideration as to how can we be more inclusive towards things like replicas and deployment. And the reason I'm saying this, because we are moving to a more generic pattern, so giving special care to just pod would mean that okay, so why are we doing that? Why not? Okay, so then we would include some extra special logic for replica set and then deployment, and the list goes on. So if you come up with a better solution, then update here, and then we can have a conversation on this PR. And if anyone has any better suggestion as to what can be done here, so if just to bring people in so that people have a context of what we are talking about. This workflow basically starts your Meshery adapter. It starts your Meshery server, and then it tries to deploy something, and that something is given inside of our pattern file, where we basically try to deploy maybe a service mesh, we try to deploy a sample app. And right now what we were doing is, after deploying, we were just checking if a particular pod was started, and we want to be more generic than that. For example, if we deploy Istio, then Istio control pin also registers a bunch of CRDs, so we want to be sure that hey, things like destination rule and things like these things exist. So the way we do it is like the logic you see on line 175 and 176. So basically we become more generic, and we so if anyone has a better suggestion as to what can be a more generic solution to find out whether a particular resource has been successfully provisioned / installed, then that would be a nice thing. So right now, as you can see in the logic for pods, what we're doing is we just do kubectl get pods, and the list that is returned, we just see if the status says running or not. And for everything other than pod, we just check that it returns something. So if it returns something, we don't further go and check. For example, for something like deployment, we don't go further and check if the ready state is that. So if someone in the call knows some a more generic solution, then they can put forth that. If someone else has any comments on Ruturaj's PR, then
yep, absolutely. Yeah, so if anyone has any better ways, please let me know. If not, then I'll definitely look into what could be a better way to do it.
Any more thoughts or suggestions? Thank you, Ruturaj.
Actually, here's one other one. We'd if we end up taking it even deeper and deeper into more and more objects of what we're gonna verify that are there. In the past, we'd used Kudo as a Kubernetes native mode of doing that. We're using Kudo currently in SMI conformance. I don't know if that's something we should use here or not, but it's food for thought, food for consideration. I'll pop a link over.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Abhi or Aditya, would you like to share progress on the SMP dashboard and the Meshery, please?
Yeah, so let me share my screen. So as you all know that we have been working on the dashboard in which we are trying to publicize the results that run in CNCF cluster labs. So right now we have a basic structure of the page, but I think we are trying to go further, like level up in the navigability, and instead of showing results directly as a landing page, we will be showing performance profiles, and then the user will be able to click the results according to a individual performance profile. Abhi, you want to add something more on this dashboard?
Yeah, nothing special. It's just you can see the environment in which your tests are running. You can compare different performance of different service meshes based on the results, and we are further trying to give some useful information out of the chart results that should be shown as a title of the graph. That's what.
Yeah. And recently we introduced Meshmark, and there was a web page needed for this, and the website is public, and in future we will be assigning Meshmark to different performance profiles and deployments, in which I think Lee will be able to describe more clearly what Meshmark is.
Nice. Yeah. Well, is that an empty picture? Oh, okay. Broken picture.
Okay, I think there's network issues.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. If anybody has Meshmark questions, come ask. Otherwise, I won't bore you. But instead, take 60 seconds and watch the demo, maybe, and that'll give you more of a sense.
Yeah, those were the updates regarding the dashboard and Meshmark.
The next topic is also yours. Would you like to keep going?
Yeah, so Pranav will be here to help. So we have been developing the public facing API for SMP profiles benchmark test. Let me share my screen. Yes, so what we have is we run some scheduled test in the our benchmark test in our GitHub action, and we want to expose those tests to everybody in public, so that they can see like how the different meshes behave when they run under a certain load. So Meshery SMP action. So Pranav is developing an API endpoint for the same thing, where we can fetch all the patterns, all the benchmark tests and the results, and show it to the public, like and those results will be used in the SMP action dashboard page you just saw right now, like a minute before. So SMP dashboard here. So instead of like direct test result, you will expect to see the bunch of performance profiles where you will see some soap test, burst test, or jot revocation test, and you will be able to see more defined progress and test results there. So that's the plan for now. Pranav, do you have anything else?
Yeah, like you explained it really well. Like I would like to enhance. I would like to add more information on the same action. So I will take up the next action, next item on our meeting minutes. That is like discussion on the actions which we are running. Okay. I'll share my screen quickly so that I can show. So basically, if you don't know about this repository, here we are running two different kinds of GitHub action. One is that first of all, we are running actions on these actions basically deploy Meshery. Then they deploy service meshes through Meshery, and then we run the performance test, which you see over here, with the same kind of performance test which we run on a Meshery UI, or the ones which we run through Meshery CTL. We are trying to replicate the same thing on through these actions, so that there are few advantages of this. First, that like other users, other organizations can also run their tests and get their results to be shown on this dashboard, which we just discussed. Now, few things to be considered here is that a couple of days back, I was seeing through the logs of these actions, and what I realized that first of all, first I'll tell you the name of these to search for these actions, it's like the if you want to search the profile for each of these actions, then it's like the name of the service mesh, the type of action being run, and the type of test being run, like the soak test or the load test. So as we can see, there was just just a test which was run a couple of hours back, like just 1 hour back, and like the thing is that the test results are not being shown here, like it's being not done perfectly, because of which that even though the test is being run, it is not being saved. Like if you can see here, the last result was 13th of May, and like before that it was 23rd of February. And if you see this for other kinds of tests, like it's 20th of February, and this is kind of a concern I had, and I also need to discuss this on performance channel, which I'll do it after this call. And one more thing to add is that for few tests like which are being run on CNCF hosted runners, like this one, if you see the environment is like the API for the sample app is not reachable, because of which, and the second thing is that the context, Kubernetes context is also not reachable to the Meshery server, because of which the tests are not being performed, and hence like the Meshery container just exit out without even performing the test, and hence it's not being saved. So this is the concern I had, which I wanted to discuss. And like any thoughts on these? I know I need to like tell Jen and Harsh to see what's going wrong in this. So anyone have any comments on this thing?
Actually, as I saw it, like I just I saw it in one of the previous call too, when we are discussing the scheduled benchmark tests. I was just not totally confirmed. That's why I didn't ask. But yeah, I think that if you go to the Meshery UI, so this test result.yaml, their child processes, like these tests are I believe they're fetched based on the name of the file, which is istio40.test.yaml, and the results are shown there. And I was worried if the scheduled benchmark test is run successful are sent to the server, because the last test results are like way too before, like
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah, same thing, like I also wanted to discuss it. So maybe we can discuss this on our performance call as well, like we have it on Thursdays. That's the thing I wanted to discuss.
So Pranav,
And for
the thing you're being held up on now is that you can't, that internal to the GitHub action, you're unable to speak to Kube API. Is that right?
Yeah, because like the thing is that we're running Meshery in a Dockerized container, and the Kubernetes is being deployed as a separate thing. So
Yeah.
because of those, I think because of some OS permission problem, like the kubeconfig folder is not reachable to Meshery server. Yeah.
I see. So yeah, either we need to, yeah, a couple of ways to maybe go about that. One is to get to have a separate script run beforehand to grab that and make it accessible. Like the script that we're running to, and Avi, I'm just going to mute you, man, because you have some active participants there in the background. When that automation runs, so this automation is running inside the CNCF cluster, inside the CNCF lab, which is just another name for Equinix data center. So inside of there, we're borrowing time and borrowing an entire hardware servers or bare metal servers. So when we initiate the test, we will grab a bare metal server from the pool, we will provision the OS, and then also provision Kubernetes, which is to say that we have scripts that are running that have kernel knowledge of the environment. And so those scripts can, if Meshery as a Dockerized container can't access, the volume mount isn't working for some reason. One, we're probably provisioning the Docker host wrong, or because it's disallowing that a read-only volume mount to occur. Two, we already have other mechanisms outside of the containerized environment to grab that file, make it then available to Meshery. So there's a couple of answers. You need to get this in front of Xin. Huang is probably the right, and he's been fairly responsive. I wouldn't wait for the Thursday. I don't know if it's even tomorrow or not, but I wouldn't wait for that meeting, in part because it's usually at like 1 a.m. for him ish, somewhere there, or midnight. So he doesn't often come. That said, let's also get you access to the environment so that you can potentially affect the change yourself. In the meantime, you can have access to the.
By the way, Pranav, in the changes that you made where you explicitly gave it permission, that also changed nothing, right?
Yeah, that didn't change anything.
And when you created that PR, did you cat the file so that we could see the contents, or?
I didn't cat. Maybe I can raise one more PR for that.
Yeah, just to. The thing is that it will only run after it's merged because of the permission issues. So it's very hard to go around it, because to debug it, either you have, I think Lee's right. We should get you access to the environment so that will be a much better way to go about this thing.
One additional thing one thing I want to add is that unable to get kube open, kube API kube config files. It's for just certain tests. Like I have opened a test. It's again istio-wrk2 soap test, and the profiles are running successfully. So because we are using sleep timers for around 40 seconds to wait for Kubernetes cluster to get deployed and kube config file to be placed inside the .kube folder. So probably some environments may take even longer than 40 seconds, and another test job step just runs without the kube config file. That creates certain the problem like this. So
but the Minikube action ran successfully. That's responsible to set up your cluster, and when it successfully exits, it makes sure that the kube config is there.
And also, like, we do check like whether we have a cluster or not, and that does like give us that we have Minikube.
Okay. And I have seen some tests test fail and still you exit successfully out of the GitHub action.
Maybe we need to add more assertions so that we test whether the test was actually being performed perfectly or not. Like currently we are just letting the test run and we are not checking whether the performance test was successfully passed or not. We need to check for that as well.
By the way, when do you get the error the kube config is unable to it's not found?
It's like
after the Docker install is done, right?
Yeah.
Generator 40.
Moreover, the API is also not reachable. The sample application sheet says that it's not reachable. Ideally, it should be, because we are deploying an application which is of Istio, so that we can test it based on that.
Maybe this may be the bigger problem, that even before application is deployed successfully, you are calling back to it, and that's why it declines the request. So. And then maybe it is because we are using sleep, constant time. That should be changed.
So this means that we're not able to, from inside of the cluster, we're not able to go to that particular URL, although it's there. So that points to some networking issues from within the container and also the permission issues. I think when you will get access to the environment, you can exec into the Meshery container while the thing is running, and then do some tests from there to find out what's the core issue behind this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further suggestions? Nope, I'm guessing not. So thank you, Pranav, for bringing that up. Moving on, Jared, would you like to talk about the problems that you were facing with your Docker desktop?
Sure. Actually, I just got it working and installed just during this meeting. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but got it now. So
Right.
all good.
Okay, great. So we have an open topic regarding to the review of this design spec for the environments and multi-context. Lee, would you like to talk about this, or Ashish?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, so let me cut to the chase on one of these things. I was talking with Shabazz a little bit. So Shabazz, we need, to get you into the UI and get you in there quickly, is we need a couple of modals, which is to say confirmation modals, in which people will invoke an action, a user will, and they need to confirm that that's what they intend to do. This is something that we need in context of multi-cluster. So yeah, as Ashish walks through this, keep that in mind and see if you can figure out what's needed.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I have to. Okay, so we recently, not recently, a few months back, we merged. We basically now support multi-cluster, but it's not fully ready. So by fully ready, I mean that there are a few things here and there, and one of which is the fact that currently the clients, which is the Meshery CTL as well as the Meshery UI, do never actually at this point explicitly pass the context IDs of the Kubernetes clusters in which they want that operation to be applied. And it is like, if you are deploying a pattern, it's on /API/pattern/deploy, and we don't pass it. So what we need to do is that maybe Abhi can talk about this and he can work on the UI side. I'll handle the Meshery CTL. So what we need is that on all of the UIs, it has to be enforced that you have to be explicit when you perform any action against a cluster or any clusters, any n number of clusters. You have to explicitly pass the array in the query parameter that, hey, I want my action to be performed against these clusters, which is not the case right now. So if if someone wants to collaborate with Abhi on this thing on the UI side, or if someone wants to collaborate with me on Meshery CTL side, and we would need unit tests. So if someone wants to write unit tests as well, it would be really helpful. I would be creating an issue regarding this thing after the call, and if someone wants to get assigned to it, and by assigned to it, I will be majorly working on this. You'll have to help me, get through maybe write some unit tests. So on the Meshery CTL side, and you can help Abhi also to collaborate on this. So the core idea is to get all the clients up to date with the recent changes, so that all the clients now speak in the language of multi-cluster, so that all the clients are always explicitly performing an operation against explicitly defined set of clusters. So yeah, so that was the update from my side, and the document that you're seeing on your screen is where we are having the conversation right now. And it kind of encompasses everything from our Meshery broker to our Meshery CTL to Meshery server to everything, and how the multi-cluster thing affects all of these components of Meshery. And currently I have spoken on the behalf of Meshery CTL, Meshery UI, and Meshery server. So in Meshery CTL also, we would need this change to be propagated, and there are some other considerations as well. So I think there was another doc related to Meshery, how Meshery CTL is being affected by this thing, and I think this was merged here. So the discussion of Meshery CTL as well is here. So for people for the active participants who are already contributing to Meshery CTL, this would be a change in all of the endpoints that Meshery CTL hits, the addition of this query parameter. So after I create an issue, if you want to help me on that, you can. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. If someone has any suggestions or anything.
So Ashish, are you sure the cluster, the context ID should be sent as a query parameter and not some type of headers or so? Because what you can do with fetch or Axios is that you can intercept all the requests and set default header to them. Sending it as a query parameter will kind of modify the request sent, like the endpoint, then question mark, then context ID, then this. So I'm just asking for the again thinking again about if it's
I think
given as a query parameter.
A query parameter looks more explicit, so it's more explicit rather than headers, and to avoid any caching issues that may be on the client side with headers, and it would be because we have Meshery CTL as well as also as a client, so we have to think about that as well. And we have to, although on Meshery CTL side also we can push things onto the header, but to be more straightforward and more simple, passing that thing on the query parameter makes sense to me.
And by the way, one action can be performed on two different clusters at the same time, right?
Yeah, n number of clusters at the same time. So if let's say on an endpoint /API/pad/deploy, you explicitly passed 4 contexts, then that would be that action would be performed across all those things, and there would be a default 0 context ID 0 or all context. So if someone selects that, we would handle. So in that case, you would just pass context ID equals 0 in that case, just 1, and we would handle that on the backend by iterating through all of the clusters, and we'll apply that operation to all the clusters of that. So on the nav bar, when you would be making changes, just make sure that whenever the user clicks on something, whenever user clicks on, let's say there is a list of these contexts and user clicks on one of these, you make sure to persist that thing on the UI, so that whenever a next operation is invoked, that thing is being sent. And when someone selects all, I think the UX should be like, if someone selects all, the other things that were selected should be unselected, because they have selected also. There is no meaning of selecting the other stuff individually. So if someone selects all, you just pass context ID as 0, and that would be handled at the back end as well.
Yeah, as you said, like all the API requests would now be also including the query parameter of the context.
Not all, anything that has anything to do with Kubernetes. So if something, because we also perform operations outside of Kubernetes, if something does not involve Kubernetes, then you don't need to. But if from the server side, we would be throwing error that hey, please explicitly tell me the cluster against which you want to perform that operation. So on the UI side, you would be needing to propagate this change across only the endpoints where it is possibly concerned with the Kubernetes cluster. For example, I think for the API which just saves the or like uploads the pattern file or uploads the application or just performs an upload, I don't think there you need to pass it because you're not performing, we're just saving stuff. So you don't necessarily need to be connected to a cluster to just save stuff. So there are a lot of operations that does not require it. And if it does not require it, we do not enforce it.
Okay, I'll see the we already have a API endpoint chart or graph or Excel sheet, right? So okay, I'll see like
Yeah, there is
a
actually an Excel sheet regarding this where I have created an entry about whether this particular API endpoint expects the context IDs. I think okay, Aditya, you're sharing your screen. It's like a Meshery API endpoints. If you can open it, so the spreadsheet name is Meshery API endpoints. We were tracking all of the API endpoints there. I had
okay. By the way, like I could just recall two methods by which you can send the context ID. One by possibly changing the headers, and other by query parameter. Another could be the body, which doesn't look too good. Is there any other way we can send something to the server inside an API request?
by the way, I've pasted a link in the chat of the spreadsheet where we are tracking the Meshery API endpoints.
Is this the one, Ashish? The one that I have opened?
No, that's the one with Meshery for Meshery Cloud specifically. The one I have shared in the chat is for Meshery API endpoints.
Would you please go ahead, share your screen?
Yeah, okay, that seems okay. Abhishek has shared a screen. Yeah, this one. So here, if you move a little rightwards, you'll find the one. Yeah, use multi. Can you scroll up above on the topmost column, topmost row? Yeah, the one which says uses multi-context query parameters. So the endpoints which require it, I'll be making changes and while I'll be enforcing on the backend, I'll be updating this on this particular column so that when you're making changes on the UI, you can refer back to this particular spreadsheet and make the changes accordingly. You're on mute, Abhi.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Just to note to self, I have to actively remember the context switches and the current context IDs that is being selected by the user, and then sent it to the server
selected
as a query parameter.
Yeah.
To some selected endpoints like you were mentioning here.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or suggestions on the multi-cluster design spec? Okay.
Yeah, that the Meshery CTL and its considerations need to be, there's a little more thought that needs to be given there, which is unfortunate because it'll sort of hold up progress on the API. Whether the parameters for context, whether the contexts that are to be used for invoking a particular operation, whether it's passed as a parameter or in the body of a REST request is maybe neither here nor there, or like maybe those are something of a wash. The challenge with it can be more convenient to script around something that you can, well, I don't know. Between it being in the query string or in the body is probably, anyway, something for you guys to discuss. But with respect to Meshery CTL, the problem is Meshery CTL it's shoot. Yeah, it's going to get convoluted. Yeah, it gets complex because Meshery CTL has contexts. Those contexts are in reference to, or they represent, a Meshery deployment. A Meshery deployment may manage more than one Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes context. The terms are almost interchangeable, not entirely.
So for starters, what we can do is that in Meshery CTL, we prompt for all the endpoints which require the multi-context thing. We always prompt the user with the available context when they like say Meshery CTL pattern apply and then give the file and the whole thing, and they press enter instead of directly doing it. We prompt them with all the available clusters, and from there we allow them, just like it's like equivalent of the Kubernetes context switcher on the Meshery UI nav bar.
Yeah, it can make it a little difficult to script over if there's a required human interaction happening. But yeah, so long as
Also there can be, okay, so to override that we can have a hyphen context flag. If it is passed, then we don't prompt it, and that flag basically explicitly gives the context ID. So inside of the workflows we can use that.
Yeah, it's just that how would people know what the context ID is? And then, and anyway, I don't want for this to be difficult. Like unfortunately, it starts to unravel a bit. There is about a year ago, I wrote up a design spec for how to handle multiple Kubernetes contexts or multiple Kubernetes clusters inside of Meshery CTL context. And it's just not where we want to focus. It's just like we need to lean into something like you just said, Ashish, which is, well, go look. I don't know. You can't use Meshery CTL to look up the context ID. Like you've got to do it separately. You got to invoke an API call. Like if you really want to script over it, we just don't support it very well from the CTL itself currently. You've got to run, if you're going to be scripting anyway, like go hit this endpoint and it'll tell you your context and you can figure it out. That's a
we can maybe add a system command to list all your contexts.
Yeah. But exactly. So it just unravels. And because it'll just keep going. It will absolutely. Okay. Then what happens when you add a new context there? Then you deploy the operator. Then how do you make sure the operator is connected into the, you just, and instead, if we have well-documented REST APIs or GraphQL APIs that people can use to script instead of using Meshery CTL, it's frustrating. But it's just something we need to do is curtail the investment there until people really say that they need it. So it needs to be documented what that is and how we expect people to come around it.
Yeah.
Because if they go over and some people, they'll come to Meshery and say, oh, great, I just, I think of this like a service mesh orchestrator. And it is much, 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 much more than that. But then, so they might go to Meshery CTL, mesh deploy, and they say the name of the mesh. And then, but then it responds back with, well, actually, you need to provide your context IDs. If they're doing it interactively, we could do what you had said, which is look up the available contexts that are registered, present them back and have them selected, and they're off to the races. Like, great, that core use case can be solved. And then, to the extent that it's a known, that there is a flag where you can specify those instead of selecting them. It's just that you need to go look up the context elsewhere. That's probably where we would want to draw the line, because it's not that we wouldn't necessarily want to have another subcommand or construct being exposed. It's not only just that, but then it's like, okay, you've got to represent it inside of mesh config, inside of the Meshery CTL contexts themselves. We say, what platform do you want to deploy it on, Docker or Kubernetes? But then you'd have to go well beyond that and start to track all of specific, not just Kubernetes, but like specifically what Kubernetes. And So yeah, great. So anyway, I think you probably got an answer for it now, which is good. Cool. Anybody else have feedback on the multi-cluster? What's next?
Yep. So let's circle back to the cloud native playground and the Meshery planning. Lee, would you just like to talk a little bit about the V60 release?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working on this release for a long time, and we just have allowed feature creep, and there's no inherent fault assigned there. It's just what has naturally occurred. And a lot of you have worked on quality and upping quality, which has been good. I think we're seeing fewer and fewer bugs. And with KubeCon here, it's time to let people know there's a whole slew of new capabilities from the .5 release. There's 1, 2, 3 or so new adapters. There's a long list. Actually, it becomes daunting thinking about writing up that full release and the release note, or like telling people. But it's totally time to do it. Some of you have put in some effort toward blog posts on different features. I'll send out in the Slack channel and maybe on the mailing list, just a summarization, a top level summarization of what those features are and where any of you, whether you worked on those features or not, any of you have an opportunity to either improve Meshery docs, write a separate blog post just on that feature. Doesn't have to be super special, but just something legible and understand, that people can kind of follow and understand what the feature is supposed to do. Whether or not you want to do a video recording, whether you're narrating or not, we're missing a lot of that type of. There's so much to tell people, and so there's a call for that. So I'm calling for that from all of you now. It would be ideal if we announced that release early next week, because it's just going to take a little while to get it organized and out the door. Is that of interest to anyone immediately? I know Jared has already signed up to do a video recording of installing the Meshery Docker extension using his Windows environment. And so maybe you'll hear his sweet voice on the video, or maybe he won't narrate it. I don't know.
I can narrate it, whatever works best.
Nice. I think it'd be great if you did. I think yeah, you got it. There's a deepness to the tone of your voice that just sounds authoritative as you speak over your mouse movements. And yeah, I think that'd be great. I think it'd be great to, there's a number of different venues to post videos like that. In the community YouTube channel, on Meshery.io, on layer5.io, on inside of maybe we'll do a press release about this. Maybe we'll there's a lot. There's folks that have various meetups. I just got asked last night, actually. So Carlos is looking at doing potentially a meetup and kind of talking about Meshery and things, and that's fantastic. And if anybody's familiar with Brett Fisher, he's a fellow Docker captain. Last night, he was just asking for someone to come on to his show, and do talk about the extension. And so there are more of these inbound requests than that I want to just pass those along to any of you that feel comfortable doing it. You also need to be qualified to do it, which is to say, if you're feeling comfortable doing it, then you're probably qualified. So a lot of times I will grab anyone who's interested and have them join me so you can begin to get more comfortable and get some exposure and kind of get into the flow of that, and then hand some of those things off. So we don't have we kind of have stopped our weekly community call. So some of this would normally kind of go into there. Yeah, those opportunities are always floating around. The upcoming Carlos, as you and Ashish and Rahul go to organize the meetup, I encourage you to loop in Mario. He might be able to help. So yeah, so on the .6 release, like, hey, it's time. Let's go ahead. We mostly have the Band-Aid off. It's mostly off. We're just gonna last a little bit, do it real fast. And wow, what an amazing thing. Actually, a challenge will be, I don't know if you all saw the press release about Meshmark that Gaurav or Subedi was talking about earlier, that there's a bunch of quotes from various other groups in there, from Isovalent, from Red Hat, from Fiserv, there's a long list. So actually, it's kind of the same challenge or same thing that we need for the .6 release, because is there a new Cilium adapter? Yes. Is there a new, I forget the other new adapters, but there's a lot of new features that others have used and can speak to. So I just hope that we do it justice. Multi-context, multi-cluster is another like big feature within there. Version docs, yep. News, lots. Actually, it's like, yeah, it's advanced. It's the content, it's the designs, the patterns, the designs, it's the filters, the applications, it's the support for Docker Compose, it's an extension. It's like, I'm getting tired just talking about it. So if you're interested, just message in Slack and let's get some stuff written up. Let's get an announcement out.
There's also a Slack channel you guys can join. It's called Blog Kitchen.
Oh yeah, there is Blog Kitchen. There's also we should go tell the CNCF that the project would like to host I don't know what we call it, but just to host a webinar and talk about and then go over the release. That'd be great. It'd be great for me. Like part of my goal has always been to not be presenting, for everyone else to be presenting it. So if enough of you lean into that, that's achievable, because you can have a slice and a slice. And what a cool thing for each of you to represent. Anybody have other thoughts? KubeCon? People learn anything, see anything new?
Lee, are you going to be at KubeCon North America?
Yeah, wait, did you just, yeah, I missed the first, did you say we, or like, for sure the project will be represented. We'll have office hours for Meshery, for SMP. We'll see if we don't have a third project in the CNCF by then, maybe. But then probably a number of us would physically be there as well. Yeah, totally. Like that's actually an area of help, of needed help as well. Part of the reason that we don't have virtual office hours this go round for Meshery and SMP is like, if it's anyone's fault, it's my fault for like not following up and filling in the form to get us a spot. I'm just overrun. So we like perpetually always want to grab a spot for sure. So we'll have to try to get that fixed as more maintainers come on, as more of you are on mailing lists, that those messages come across. Like, yeah, it'd be great if anyone's kind of taking someone's taking ownership each time, stepping up. And there are people who have a community manager hat here. We don't have enough of them. They get overrun as well. And so I'm going to point out a link to the community manager role. and what it's about in case, because that this sort of a thing, or helping organize the virtual project office hours, maybe our virtual booth. Hey, are we using our webinar? We get owed any number of webinars from the CNCF, where there's a bunch of ways to help get the word out that we're not taking advantage of or being purposeful about. And so, yeah, folks that are inclined toward that, it'd be helpful.
So I'll just briefly go over these two topics. One of them is the cloud native playground. This is also the summer project for the LFX, for the upcoming LFX term. Basically, this is sort of like play with K8s or play with Docker. It's a virtual playground where you'd be able to, have an instance of Meshery and play around. This would also incorporate the learning paths, which we have on the layer5.io page. If you guys haven't seen this also has some great stuff. You guys can go through this as well. And yeah, basically we need volunteers who can help build this up. Right now it's just a form which right now it's just a form for getting onto the waiting list for when we release it. So we need contributors to help with this initiative. And similarly with the Meshery.7 release, which would have the refactoring of Meshery UI. This is the design. This is the implementation tracker. This has a few items which are still left to implement. These are just reusable components that React components that you need to build out. And here is the restructuring branch. Basically, it would incorporate Redux for state management. There is also a design spec that you can go through for this. And this README also has how to contribute to this branch and how to set up your environment. Yep. And yeah, there's a volunteer needed to refresh the assignments of the feature champions. There was a post made on Discuss, which has names of all the feature champions. Some of them have become inactive or have left, so the names need to be refreshed. If anyone is interested in taking one of these on, you guys can comment on this post and we can get that assigned to you. I'll leave the link in the chat, and I'll also leave it in the minutes so that if anyone would like to volunteer and just go change up the names here. Yep, I think that covers it. So anyone else would like to say? Okay, so I guess not. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. Thank you guys for joining. I'll see you guys next week. Bye all.
Going on.
Bye. Bye.